Nelson Mandela and Rosa Parks are the focus of an MSU exhibit in Africa. It reminds us how the words of children can speak to the world. The MSU Museum and the Nelson Mandela Museum in South Africa crafted this exhibit to help people understand the lives of two human rights leaders. Nelson Mandela and Rosa Parks lived parallel lives, locked in the struggle for human rights on separate points on the globe. Mandela was imprisoned in South Africa and eventually rose to lead his country as president. Parks became an icon of the American civil rights movement when she refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white man.
The inspiration that those letters hold and the messages in those letters are rather timeless, just as the values that Mr. Mandela and Mrs. Parks stood up for are also timeless. You know, the passion to pursue dreams, to pursue issues, to fight for human rights, to struggle for freedom are actually inspirational lessons and pursuits that have meaning for many people, young and old, and all around the world.
Across the years, children have written letters to these two. Now it's the letters weaving their stories together in a rich tapestry of a common history. The exhibit opened in South Africa on Nelson Mandela's 90th birthday. These pictures don't do it justice. To really feel the impact, you have to see it in person. The exhibit is a way to extend the reach of these icons of human rights, but it is the words that matter, and the fact that these words are the words of children, written to these elders of our world, well, it just means that much more.
Dear Rosa Parks, how do you become brave when you are a coward?
Dearest Nelson Mandela, I would like to congratulate you on winning the Nobel Peace Prize.
At last, the people of South Africa can be treated fairly, and can at last look up to someone they truly admire.
How did you feel when the cops arrested you for your actions taken in the bus, even though it was an innocent thing? How did you go through that time of pain? How does it feel to start something that helps Black people and equality in a huge way? It must touch you in a way you can't explain.
For me, it is reward enough that your efforts have paved the way for a democratic South Africa. I hold you in highest regards and hope that one day I will make a difference in the world the way you have.
For me, I am Oriental and I hear lots of jokes and comments about my race, but I am too afraid to stand up for myself because I feel that I am outnumbered.
The reason for doing this exhibition was not only to bring forward those lessons about what were the values and the motivations of Mrs. Parks and Mr. Mandela, but was also to remind younger generations that these two trailblazers existed and that we are where we are today in terms of civil rights in this country and human rights and the end of apartheid in South Africa because of what those two individuals did. And here we are with just a simple set of letters. And back to your question about what's exciting about working in museums is because you can take those original documents, those primary materials, and from those be able to launch major initiatives that can change people's attitudes, change people's lives, educate them in ways, and they all go back to the original materials themselves.
The MSU Museum and the Nelson Mandela Museum worked as one to make the exhibit a living experience, one where all are welcome, where all are led to think about the long echoes of the lives these two lived.
Individuals, young and old, elders, tribal leaders, political, civic leaders, academics from the higher education, who came into that exhibition, every one of them responded and responded positively to the information that was there, and also were motivated to think about ways that they could use that information in teaching and education in the area. Mr. Mandela himself went through the exhibition and was extremely pleased and touched by the presentation of the information.
It's a project from the deep partnership between the Nelson Mandela Museum and MSU.
If we are going to engage in presenting culture, I really deeply believe that we should be working with members of that cultural community in constructing whatever is the way that we were going to interpret that community or serve that community. So it's responsive to community needs, and then it's structured and cultivated and implemented with the community input.
You know, this project was built in many ways on many other projects and experiences of working, I think, respectfully and in collaboration with communities in a different way. People use community so much as a kind of loose general term, but it really means giving voice and really committing to being in the community, not just visiting the community.
This effort, another example of how Michigan State connects to the world. The depth of this presentation goes beyond the borders of the exhibit itself. The letters bring deep thought and give deep meaning to the ongoing struggle for justice and human rights.
But it's deep, not just in terms of the project one's working on, but it's long-standing. And so one of the things that our colleagues in South Africa say is as they came to know us, is that, well, you keep coming back. You know, so many of our other American colleagues who've come, or colleagues from Europe and other places, they come in with the one-time interest, and it's a good experience, but then they leave. We always remind people that once we start working together, we anticipate we'll be working together for a long time, and that changes the nature of the relationship.
This exhibit is about human rights, but the idea behind it is something you might not immediately see: sustainability. MSU's African Higher Education Partnership Initiative is a combined effort with African education institutions to tackle problems in Africa.
It's very much about sustainability, and we can look at sustainability on a number of different levels. I mean, from the perspective of this work that we've been doing and that's led to this particular project with the Mandela Museum, that grows out of that training initiative where we've been involved in training the next generation of young people in South Africa, and it's gratifying for us because we see many of those individuals who took part in the training that we were able to put together are now in leadership positions at cultural heritage institutions all across South Africa.
The struggle for human rights goes on. Things have changed in America and South Africa, but the struggle continues. This collection points out we should not forget.
Part of what we're trying to inspire is to get young people to write letters, not to Mr. Mandela or Mrs. Parks now, but to write letters to people who in their lives have touched their lives in some way, or they see some of the values that Mr. Mandela or Mrs. Parks embodied. And to get them to think critically about what it is that makes remarkable individuals like this stand out and become such important kind of barometers for a better world.
Younger kids have grown up in a free democratic society, and so, you know, they don't completely understand that their parents actually lived a very different kind of experience than they had. So, yeah, it's important to be able to remind people that this is history. This is a historical record that we should be aware of, and especially when we have places in the world where there are great violations of human rights and people who are struggling to have rights. It's something that we all need to be aware of.
This exhibit will take these letters around the world, and it will be digitized and put online.
I wish other people had the guts that you had a long time ago. Maybe this racism would have stopped.